Dr. Amanda Brooks stifled a yawn as she stared at the endless stream of data flowing across her monitors at the Arecibo Aviv Observatory. The midnight shift was always quiet, but tonight felt particularly uneventful. She reached for her lukewarm coffee, grimacing at the bitter taste. Her colleagues often questioned why someone with her credentials would choose the graveyard shift at a listening station, especially after her controversial papers on crystalline consciousness had nearly derailed her career. The answer was simple: the night sky held secrets that most people were too busy to notice. At 3:47 a.m., every system in the observatory screamed to life. Amanda jolted upright, coffee forgotten as she stared at readings that shouldn't exist. The incoming signals defied conventional physics, patterns of light that seemed to bleed rather than reflect, carrying impossible amounts of information. "This can't be right," she muttered, fingers flying across her keyboard. The patterns matched theoretical models she proposed years ago, models that had earned her ridicule from the scientific community. According to her sensors, 12 massive objects had just dropped out of hyperspace beyond Mars's orbit. She grabbed her phone, then hesitated. The last time she'd reported an anomaly, her supervisor had nearly fired her. But these readings... The decision was made for her when every screen in the observatory flickered and transformed into cascading light patterns. Amanda's breath caught in her throat. The patterns weren't random. They were a language, one she'd theorized in her disputed paper on crystalline-based consciousness. "Holy shit," she whispered, reaching for the encrypted line to the Pentagon. I was right. The response was immediate. Within 20 minutes, the observatory was swarming with military personnel. Amanda found herself face-to-face with General Mitchell, a stern-faced man who seemed distinctly uncomfortable with civilian scientists. "Dr. Brooks," he said, skipping any pleasantries, "I'm told you can make sense of these signals." "I can try," she replied, pulling up her old research. "The patterns suggest a crystalline-based life form, communicating through manipulated light waves. It's exactly what I predicted in my paper on non-carbon-based consciousness, but nobody..." "Skip the history lesson, Doctor. Can you talk to them?" Amanda bit back her frustration. "Maybe, but I'll need..." Another surge of light filled the screens, this time forming distinct geometric patterns. Amanda's eyes widened as she recognized mathematical constants, the universal language of science. The aliens were trying to establish basic communication protocols. "They're not just saying hello," she said, studying the patterns. "They're scared." General Mitchell frowned. "Scared of what?" Before Amanda could answer, new images appeared, massive ships, sleek and angular, pursuing the crystalline vessels. The pursuers' weapons fired beams of pure energy that shattered anything they touched. "They're refugees," Amanda breathed. "They're running from something." The general's phone buzzed. His face darkened as he read the message. "NASA just confirmed 12 unknown vessels past Mars. They're heading straight for Earth." Amanda stared at the light patterns, her mind racing. Years ago, she'd theorized that crystalline life forms would be capable of perfect information storage and transmission, living quantum computers. If she was right, these beings could revolutionize human understanding of consciousness itself. But first, they had to survive. "General," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "I need a direct link to these ships. If I'm right about their biology, I might be able to establish real communication." Mitchell studied her for a long moment. "You have 1 hour, Doctor. After that, we do this my way." As the general strode away, Amanda turned back to her screens. The light patterns had changed again, forming complex fractals that seemed almost desperate. She cracked her knuckles and got to work. After all, she'd spent years preparing for this moment. She just hadn't expected it to arrive at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Amanda's fingers were numb from typing when she finally cracked the pattern. The crystalline ship's basic communication protocols aligned perfectly with her theoretical models, not because she'd been lucky, but because there were only so many ways light could be manipulated to carry quantum information. "I'm in," she'd announced to the room of military personnel and hastily assembled scientists. "They're calling themselves the Melani." Colonel Jack Davidson stepped forward, his weathered face illuminated by the cascading light patterns. Unlike the other military officers who'd been cycling through the observatory, he actually seemed interested in understanding the aliens rather than just assessing their threat level. "Ask them why they're here," he said quietly. Amanda input the query using her improvised interface. The response came in a burst of geometric patterns that made her blood run cold. "They're running from something called the Galactic Coalition," she translated, her voice tight. "A confederation of silicon-based life forms that—" She paused, double-checking the translation. "That's conducting systematic purges of what they call evolutionary dead ends." Davidson's eyes narrowed. "They're being hunted for their biology." "Not just them." Amanda pulled up a new pattern sequence. "The Coalition believes only silicon-based life forms are worthy of existence. They consider both crystalline and carbon-based life to be developmental mistakes." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity, being carbon-based, would be classified as another evolutionary dead end. A new pattern burst across the screens, a tactical display showing the Melani ship's formation. Davidson stepped closer, his military training kicking in. "Those aren't civilian vessels," he said, pointing to the configuration. "That's a defense screen. These refugees are military." Amanda relayed the observation to the Melani. The response was immediate and complex. "They were part of their species' last line of defense," she translated. "These ships are all that's left of their military fleet. The rest," she swallowed hard. "The rest were shattered." Davidson's jaw tightened. "Ask them about their pursuers' capabilities." The answer came in detailed technical specifications that made several scientists gasp. The Coalition's technology was centuries beyond Earth's current level. Their energy weapons could crack planets, and their ships could bend space itself. "So, why come to us?" Davidson asked. "We're hardly in a position to help." Amanda posed the question. The response made her laugh despite the tension. "They've been watching us," she said. "We're the only spacefaring species they've found that achieved technological advancement while remaining carbon-based. They say we're uniquely stubborn." "Stubborn enough to survive," Davidson muttered. Then, louder, "Why didn't they approach the other carbon-based species?" Amanda's hands froze over the interface as the answer came through. "There are no others. Not anymore." A new alert blared through the observatory. NASA's deep space monitoring had detected massive objects decelerating at the edge of the solar system. The Coalition had arrived. "How long?" Davidson demanded. 72 hours until they reach Earth, a technician reported. Amanda turned back to the interface, but the Melani were already transmitting. As she translated, her face paled. "They're saying," she took a deep breath, "they're saying they never meant to bring this to our doorstep. They'll leave if we ask, try to lead the Coalition away." But she studied the complex patterns, making sure she understood correctly. "But they've seen how we fight, how we adapt. They believe that together we might have a chance to stop the purges once and for all." Davidson was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical display. Finally, he turned to her. "Tell them we need everything they know about coalition warfare." And Dr. Brooks. "Yes." "Tell them humanity doesn't abandon allies." Amanda smiled as she began to relay the message. The Milani's response was immediate. A cascade of technical data and tactical information flooding the screens. As she began translating, she couldn't help but think that sometimes the best way to prove a theory wasn't in a lab or on paper. Sometimes you had to prove it in battle. Kevin Martinez hadn't slept in 36 hours, but he couldn't look away from his NASA terminal. The anomalies in the Kuiper belt kept growing. What had started as subtle gravitational distortions had evolved into something that made his hands shake. "Dr. Brooks." He called out, his voice cracking. "You need to see this." Amanda hurried over, Carl Davidson close behind. The bags under their eyes matched Kevin's. Nobody had really slept since the Milani arrived. "Those distortions," Kevin pointed to his screen, "they're not natural. Something massive is hiding out there, using the debris field for cover. Multiple somethings." Davidson leaned in, his military training spotting what the scientists might miss. They're positioning themselves for a pincer movement. Classic encirclement strategy. Amanda was already at the light interface, relaying the information to the Milani ships. Their response came in a burst of fractals that made her curse. "Coalition Purifier-class vessels," she translated, her voice tight. "They're dedicated planetary cleansing ships. The Milani, they've seen them in action before." "How bad?" Davidson asked. The answer came in video form, transmitted through the crystalline ship's quantum memory. The footage showed a green world, much like Earth, as sleek coalition ships descended from orbit. Energy beams lanced down, and continents cracked. Within hours, the planet's surface was glass. "That was their colony world," Amanda whispered. 3 billion Milani gone in a day. The observatory speakers crackled as an emergency UN Security Council session patched in. The faces of world leaders appeared on auxiliary screens, their expressions grim. "Dr. Brooks," the Secretary General began, "the Council is divided on how to proceed. Some members suggest that surrendering the Milani might spare Earth from." "That's not an option," Amanda interrupted, protocol forgotten. "The Milani have just transmitted coalition intelligence data. Earth is already on their cleansing list. We're next, whether we help or not." She gestured to Kevin, who projected the classified coalition documents. Star charts showed systematic patterns of extinction, spreading through the galaxy like a cancer. Earth's solar system was marked in red. "The coalition doesn't negotiate," Davidson added, stepping forward. "They spent millennia engineering what they consider the perfect form of life. Anything that doesn't fit their silicon-based template is marked for elimination." The UN representatives erupted in argument until a new light pattern cut through their debate. Amanda translated in real time as a Milani commander made their case. "They're offering everything," she said. "Their quantum technology, their faster-than-light drive specifications, their energy manipulation techniques. They say Earth reminded them of their homeworld. Green, diverse, stubborn with life. They won't watch another living world die." The Security Council chambers fell silent. Finally, the Secretary General spoke. "How long until the coalition strikes?" 63 hours, Kevin responded, checking his calculations. "Maybe less." "Then we have no choice," the Secretary General declared. "The United Nations hereby grants the Milani official refugee status and pledges Earth's full military support." As the transmission ended, Davidson was already moving. "Get me every tactical officer available. We need to integrate Milani tech with our defense systems now." Amanda turned back to the interface, but paused when she noticed something different in the light patterns. "Colonel, wait, they're showing us something else." The patterns shifted, revealing Coalition tactical data they'd been hesitant to share. It showed thousands of hidden refugee ships scattered across the galaxy. Other species, both crystalline and carbon-based, waiting and watching Earth's response. "We're not just fighting for ourselves," Amanda realized. "We're fighting for every species the Coalition deemed unworthy of existence." Davidson studied the tactical display, his expression hardening. "Then we better win. Tell the Milani to begin the tech transfer. We've got 63 hours to turn Earth's primitive defenses into something that can shatter their perfect order." As Amanda relayed the message, she couldn't help but smile. The Coalition had spent millennia perfecting their form of life, but they'd never faced anything as gloriously imperfect as humanity. They were about to learn why that was a mistake. Deep within the Cheyenne Mountain complex, Amanda Brooks stared in wonder at the crystalline being before her. The Milani scientist, whose light pattern name roughly translated to "third light through crystal," whom she'd nicknamed Crystal, hovered in a containment field that simulated their homeworld's gravity. "Show me again," Amanda said, adjusting her specialized goggles that allowed her to perceive the full spectrum of Crystal's communication patterns. Crystal's form pulsed with complex geometries as they demonstrated how their crystalline structure interacted with energy weapons. Amanda's instruments captured every detail, recording quantum fluctuations that defied conventional physics. "This is incredible," she breathed, reviewing the data. "Your entire species are natural quantum repeaters. You don't just reflect energy, you can redirect it, amplify it, even modify its fundamental properties." Crystal's response came in a pattern that Amanda had learned to recognize as their equivalent of bitter amusement. The Coalition calls this primitive. They communicated. They cannot see value in what they cannot control. The lab door hissed open as Colonel Davidson strode in, followed by a team of haggard-looking engineers. "Please tell me you found something we can use," he said. "The Coalition fleet is accelerating. We're down to 50 hours. Amanda grabbed her tablet, excitement overriding her exhaustion. "Jack, watch this." She nodded to Crystal, who oriented themselves toward a testing array. The engineers activated a low-power energy beam, similar to Coalition weapons but far weaker. Crystal's form seemed to catch the energy, their internal structure rearranging in impossible ways. Suddenly, the beam redirected, its power multiplied tenfold. "Holy shit," Davidson whispered, watching the amplified beam punch through 3 feet of reinforced steel. "Can all Milani do this?" "Yes," Amanda replied, "but that's not the breakthrough." "Crystal, show them the new configuration." The Milani scientists' form shifted again, their crystalline structure adopting an intricate fractal pattern. This time, when the beam hit them, it split into dozens of smaller beams, each targeting different points. The Coalition designed their weapons to be perfect, Amanda explained, pulling up simulation data. Precise, controlled, unchanging, but the Milani can turn that perfection against them. Every energy weapon they fire becomes our weapon. Davidson studied the test results. Is tactical mind racing? How quickly can we integrate this into our defense platforms? That's the other breakthrough. Amanda grinned. She gestured to a nearby workbench where a hybrid device sat. Human electronics merged with crystalline structures. We don't need to understand exactly how it works. The Millenni can interface directly with our technology. Their consciousness extends through their entire crystalline form. They become part of the defense system. Crystal pulsed with affirmative patterns. Your adaptability complements our stability, they communicated. Coalition tactics cannot account for such. Chaos, Amanda suggested. Evolution, Crystal corrected. Davidson was already on his secure line. Get me General Mitchell. We need every Millenni volunteer integrated into our orbital defense network immediately. He turned to Crystal. Will your people agree to this? It sounds dangerous. Crystal's response came in sharp, determined patterns. We have watched countless worlds fall to coalition perfection. We will not watch Earth shatter. A warning klaxon cut through the moment. Kevin's voice came over the intercom, tense with urgency. Colonel, Dr. Brooks, we've got movement. Coalition scouts just breached the Kuiper Belt. They're probing our defenses. Davidson checked his tactical display. 48 hours left. Can we get the defense network online in time? Amanda looked at Crystal, who was already demonstrating new patterns for the engineers. We don't have a choice. The Coalition expects to find primitive savages with obsolete technology. Instead, they're going to face something they've never encountered. Human ingenuity merged with Millenni precision. She turned back to her work, determination overriding exhaustion. The Coalition had spent millennia perfecting their form of warfare, but they'd never faced an enemy that could turn perfection itself into a weapon. They were about to learn that primitive didn't mean powerless. The Coalition's first strike came at dawn. Amanda watched from Earth's primary defense control center as perfect formations of silicon-based ships dropped out of hyperspace. Their energy weapons charged with mathematical precision, each targeting a specific orbital defense platform. They're scanning for weak points, Davidson said, his voice tense. Standard Coalition protocol. They'll identify optimal targets and... Now! Amanda shouted into her comm. Crystal, activate the network. Across Earth's orbital defense grid, integrated Millenni volunteers synchronized their crystalline structures. As Coalition energy weapons discharged, something extraordinary happened. The beams never reached their targets. Instead, they caught in complex crystalline matrices, swirled through impossible geometries, and reversed course. Enhanced and multiplied, humanity's primitive defense platforms turned the Coalition's perfect weapons against them. 3 Coalition ships shattered before they could react. Status report, Davidson barked. Kevin's voice crackled over the comm. Their formation is breaking. They didn't expect. Wait. His voice dropped. Oh God. Colonel, they're adapting. New attack pattern. The Coalition fleet split into smaller groups, firing from multiple angles. Some of their shots got through, destroying 2 platforms before the Millenni could redirect them. Crystal, Amanda called, Pattern Sigma 3. The Millenni scientist, integrated into the main defense hub, pulsed with acknowledgement. The defense grid reorganized, creating overlapping fields of crystalline redirection. Coalition energy beams caught in a cascade, bouncing between platforms in an increasingly powerful loop before releasing back at their source. 5 more Coalition ships exploded. They're retreating, Kevin announced triumphantly. No, Davidson's face was grim. They're regrouping. This was just a probe to test our capabilities. He pointed to new contacts appearing on the tactical display. That's their main fleet, and that's signature. He went pale. They're deploying a planet killer. Amanda rushed to her station as alerts blared. The Coalition planet killer was like nothing in the Millenni tactical database, a massive vessel that seemed to bend space around itself. "Crystal," she called, "what are we looking at?" The Milani scientist's response came in fragmented patterns of clear distress. Space-time rupture device. Triggers gravitational collapse. No known defense. Davidson grabbed his tactical comm. All ships, fall back to secondary positions. We need to. Wait. Amanda's mind raced as she watched the planet killer's energy signature. Crystal, your people can manipulate quantum states through your crystalline structure, right? Could you theoretically affect space-time itself? Crystal's patterns shifted to confusion, then understanding, then what Amanda recognized as their version of fear. Theoretically, but at that scale, the crystalline form might shatter, fatal to the volunteer. Amanda's hands shook as she ran the calculations. But it would work. It could stop the planet killer. "Amanda," Davidson warned, reading her expression. "Whatever you're thinking." "We're out of options, Jack." She turned to Crystal. "Will you help me?" The Milani scientist's patterns pulsed with determination. To save Earth, without hesitation. What followed was a blur of activity. Amanda and Crystal worked frantically to reconfigure the main defense hub, pushing both human and Milani technology far beyond their design limits. The Coalition fleet drew closer, the planet killer charging its main weapon. 30 seconds to firing range. Kevin's voice was strained. Amanda looked at Crystal one last time. "Ready?" The Milani's patterns formed their equivalent of a smile. "It has been an honor, Dr. Amanda Brooks." Crystal's crystalline form began to glow as they pushed their quantum manipulation to its absolute limit. Space itself seemed to twist around the defense hub. The planet killer fired, and its beam vanished into a localized space-time distortion. For a moment, reality itself held its breath. Then Crystal's form shattered, scattering into a million glittering shards as the redirected energy tore through the Coalition fleet. The planet killer cracked in half, its own weapon turned against it. "Crystal!" Amanda screamed, but it was too late. As Coalition ships burned in orbit, Amanda gathered one of Crystal's fragments, its patterns now silent forever. She clutched it tight as Davidson approached. "They didn't just save Earth," she whispered. "They proved the Coalition wrong. There's nothing primitive about sacrifice." Above them, the remaining Coalition fleet retreated in disarray, their perfect order shattered by something their calculations had never accounted for, the price some would pay to protect others. The first battle was over. The war was just beginning. Amanda hadn't slept in 3 days, but she couldn't stop staring at Crystal's fragment. Even shattered, it still held traces of quantum information, echoes of the consciousness that had sacrificed everything to save Earth. Dr. Brooks. Davidson's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "The fragment, it's doing something." She looked down. The crystalline shard was pulsing with weak but distinct patterns. Her hands trembling, Amanda connected it to their quantum interface. "It's not just a fragment," she breathed, reading the patterns. "It's a key. Crystal. They encoded something before they..." She swallowed hard. "Before the end." The fragments' patterns expanded through their systems, revealing a vast network of quantum signatures scattered throughout Coalition space. Each signature matched a different species. Some crystalline, like the Milani, others carbon-based, all labeled as evolutionary dead ends by the Coalition. "They're everywhere," Davidson said, studying the data. "Hiding in asteroid belts, gas giant atmospheres, dimensional pockets. Thousands of refugee species just waiting." Not just waiting, Amanda corrected, her exhaustion forgotten as she decoded more patterns. Look at these transmissions. They've been watching us. The battle with the planet killer. Crystal made sure everyone saw it. Kevin burst into the lab, his tablet displaying dozens of intercepted Coalition communications. You need to see this. Something's happening in Coalition space. Their perfect order. It's cracking. The tactical displays lit up with new data. Across Coalition territory, refugee species were emerging from hiding. Crystal's final transmission had shown them something the Coalition had deemed impossible. Their perfect weapons could be turned against them. They need coordination, Davidson said, his tactical mind racing. A way to work together, share information. He paused, looking at Amanda. Could we use Crystal's fragment? Create some kind of quantum communication network. Amanda was already running calculations. Maybe. The fragment maintains quantum entanglement with the information network. If we could amplify it, use Earth's position as a hub, she straightened. We could create an underground railroad. Not just for communication. We could actually transport refugees here through quantum tunneling. The Coalition would notice, Kevin warned. They already have, Davidson replied, pointing to new tactical data. Look at these deployment patterns. They're spreading their forces thin, trying to maintain control everywhere at once. Their perfect system can't handle multiple species acting unpredictably. Amanda's hands flew over the interface as she worked to stabilize the quantum network. Each species brings their own primitive solution. The Coalition's greatest weakness is their inability to adapt to multiple strategies at once. The lab's screens filled with incoming transmissions as refugee species began connecting to their network. A crystalline race that could phase through solid matter. Carbon-based beings who survived in stellar coronas, species after species, each deemed unworthy by Coalition standards, each bringing unique abilities to the fight. They've had millennia to perfect their tactics, Davidson said, watching the coordination unfold. But they've never faced an enemy that changes strategies every time they adapt. Amanda clutched Crystal's fragment as new patterns emerged, signs of rebellion even within Coalition space. Younger silicon-based beings questioning their society's rigid beliefs. The perfect order was beginning to fracture. Crystal knew, she whispered. They knew their sacrifice would show everyone that resistance was possible. That being primitive didn't mean being powerless. An alert sounded. Coalition Black Ops ships detected at the edge of the solar system. They'd come to silence Earth before the revolution could spread further. Davidson was already moving. How long until the quantum network is fully operational? Amanda checked her calculations. 20 minutes, maybe less. Make it 10, he said. We've got refugees incoming from the Orion sector. Time to show the Coalition what happens when their evolutionary dead ends work together. Amanda nodded, her fingers dancing across the interface as she pushed the quantum network to its limits. Above them, Earth's combined human Millennium defenses powered up, ready to protect their new allies. The Coalition had spent millennia enforcing perfect order. They were about to learn that true strength comes from embracing chaos. The Coalition Black Ops strike came without warning. Their stealth ships, nearly invisible to conventional sensors, breached Earth's defensive perimeter. Only the quantum distortions in Crystal's fragment gave them away. Multiple contacts. Kevin's voice cracked through the command center. They're targeting the quantum network hub. Amanda's fingers flew across her console, redirecting power to the defensive grid. But these weren't standard Coalition ships. They moved erratically, adopting the chaos they claimed to despise. They're learning, Davidson growled, coordinating the counterattack, using our own unpredictability against us. A massive explosion rocked the facility. Through the reinforced windows, Amanda watched in horror as coalition troops breached the outer perimeter. Their silicon-based forms gleamed like polished obsidian, perfect in their deadly symmetry. "The network can't fall," she said, clutching Crystal's fragment. "Everything we've built, everyone we're protecting." The fragment suddenly pulsed with intense patterns, interfacing with their systems. Emergency protocols activated as hidden quantum signatures emerged throughout the facility. Dozens of refugee species, who'd been secretly stationed as a last line of defense, revealed themselves. The coalition troops found themselves facing impossible opponents. Crystalline warriors phased through walls, carbon-based beings ignited the very air, and species that defied classification turned the laws of physics themselves into weapons. But it wasn't enough. The coalition's elite forces pressed forward, their adaptive programming allowing them to counter each new threat. They were within 50 meters of the quantum hub when Amanda made her decision. "Jack," she called to Davidson, "get everyone out. I need to try something." He saw the look in her eyes, the same one Crystal had worn before their sacrifice. "Amanda, no." "The fragment," she cut him off. "It's not just storing information. It's storing Crystal's quantum consciousness pattern. If I can integrate it with the network." "It could kill you," he protested. "Or it could show the galaxy that different forms of consciousness can work together." She managed a smile. "That's worth the risk." Before he could stop her, Amanda connected Crystal's fragment directly to her neural interface. The world exploded into quantum possibilities as her consciousness merged with Crystal's stored patterns. The coalition forces breached the final door just as the transformation completed. They found themselves facing something their perfect calculations couldn't comprehend: a human consciousness working in quantum harmony with a Milani's crystalline patterns. Amanda/Crystal raised their hands, and reality rippled. The quantum network surged with power as two forms of consciousness, working as one, turned the coalition's perfect order against itself. Their silicon-based troops found their very atomic structure being rewritten by quantum manipulation they couldn't counter. The Black Ops strike force retreated in disarray, but Amanda/Crystal wasn't finished. They broadcast the entire event through the quantum network, showing every species in hiding what was possible when different forms of life worked together. The effect was immediate. Across coalition space, younger silicon-based beings who had questioned their society's rigid doctrine saw incontrovertible proof that consciousness transcended form. Riots erupted on core worlds as millennia of perfect order began to crumble. Hours later, as medical teams worked to safely separate Amanda's consciousness from Crystal's patterns, Davidson brought the news. "The coalition. It's fragmenting," he said, showing her the reports. "Progressive factions are calling for reform. Some are already defecting, seeking asylum on Earth." Amanda, her mind still resonating with echoes of Crystal's patterns, smiled weakly. They finally understand. True evolution isn't about achieving perfect form. It's about learning to work together despite our differences. "The war's not over," Davidson warned. "Hardline coalition forces are rallying." "Good," Amanda replied, feeling Crystal's consciousness gradually fade, but leaving behind new understanding. "Because we're not fighting for victory anymore. We're fighting for a galaxy where all forms of life can evolve together." Above them, through the quantum network, thousands of species prepared for the final battle. The coalition had sought perfect order in a single form of life. Instead, they'd united everything they tried to destroy. The age of silicon perfection was ending, The age of infinite diversity had begun. The final battle for Earth began not with weapons, but with a choice. The Coalition's hardline forces had gathered their remaining fleet, over 10,000 ships strong, at the edge of the solar system. Their ultimatum was simple: surrender all refugee species for processing, or watch Earth burn. Amanda stood in the Quantum Hub Command Center, her mind still adjusting to the lingering traces of Crystal's consciousness. The neural integration had changed her permanently. She now saw quantum patterns in everything, understanding reality in ways her purely human mind never could. "Their fleet is in attack position," Kevin reported, his voice steady despite the stakes. "But something's different about their formation." Davidson studied the tactical display. "They're uncertain. Look at their positioning. Perfect on the surface, but there's hesitation in their movements." Because they're not united anymore, Amanda realized, reading the quantum signatures. The progressive faction's defection has shaken their absolute certainty. For the first time in millennia, they're questioning their purpose. That's when Amanda made her decision. Against every military protocol, she opened a direct channel to the Coalition flagship. "This is Dr. Amanda Brooks of Earth," she broadcast, her voice carrying through space. "Before you attempt to enforce your perfect order, I want you to witness something." She activated the quantum network at full power. Through it, every species connected to Earth's hub began transmitting simultaneously. Not battle plans or tactical data, but their stories, their songs, their dreams. Crystalline beings shared the intricate light patterns of their poetry. Carbon-based species displayed the beautiful imperfections of their evolving cultures. Silicon-based defectors demonstrated how their perfect logic had been enhanced by emotional understanding. "This is what you're trying to destroy," Amanda continued. "Not evolutionary dead ends, but different paths to the same destination. We all seek to understand the universe, to grow, to become more than we are. Your perfection is just one way. We offer infinite ways." The Coalition fleet held position, their perfect formation wavering as the transmission continued. Then, something extraordinary happened. Ships began breaking formation, first a few, then dozens, then hundreds. "They're powering down weapons," Kevin reported, his voice thick with emotion. "The quantum network. They're requesting access." Davidson's tactical display lit up with new signatures as Coalition ships began quantum linking with Earth's hub. Not to attack, but to join the vast network of shared consciousness and culture that humanity had helped create. The hardline Coalition commander's voice crackled through the comm, heavy with the weight of revealed truth. "We sought to perfect the galaxy by eliminating variance. But in doing so, we became the very thing we feared, a dead end, unable to adapt or grow." As the Coalition fleet stood down, Amanda felt Crystal's remaining quantum patterns pulse with joy. She touched the crystalline fragment she now wore as a pendant, tears in her eyes. "Crystal knew," she whispered. "They knew that true perfection isn't found in uniformity, but in the beautiful chaos of cooperation." The days that followed would be remembered as the beginning of a new age. Earth became the capital of the Galactic Alliance, not because humans had proved superior, but because they had proved that no species needed to be superior to be valuable. The quantum network evolved into a galaxy-spanning web of shared knowledge and culture. Coalition technology merged with human adaptability and Milani quantum manipulation. New forms of life were discovered, studied, and welcomed. The age of purification ended. The age of infinite diversity had begun. 1 year later, Amanda stood in the newly constructed Alliance Chamber, watching representatives from thousands of species, silicon, carbon, crystalline, and forms yet unclassified, gather for their first assembly. Davidson, now Earth's military liaison to the Alliance, joined her. Crystal would have loved this, she said, touching her pendant. They do love it, Davidson corrected gently. Their patterns are in the quantum network, in the changes they helped create. In every species that's now free to evolve in their own way. Amanda smiled, watching the impossible gathering of life forms before her. The coalition had sought to perfect the galaxy by eliminating difference. Instead, they had united it by learning to embrace the beautiful imperfection of diversity. Above them, countless stars sparkled with promise. Not of uniform perfection, but of infinite possibilities waiting to be explored together. The end.